welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And with me, Robbie.
And we return this January to the January dumping ground for 1997's The Relic.
Or, as I had it written in my notes, The Ritual, which is, well, it's not what it's
called.
That's
how much you remembered of this film.
Yes, it's how much I enjoyed this film.
So, The Relic, a 1997 film directed by Peter Hyam, who you will know for such classics as Time Cop and 2010, the sequel to 2001: A Space Odyssey, or Arnold Schwarzenegger's End of Days.
That was a classic.
Yeah, we didn't know any of this before. We just looked it up like 30 seconds ago. We didn't know who the guy was. It stars Tom Sizemore, Rip.
Yeah, Rip Tom Sizemore, big dog.
Basically, this is a film all about basically like a kind of like an ancient tribe who they believe was the birth of superstitions and things like that. And then we basically follow a man who we're not quite sure who he is, who seems to be someone on search for these tribes. And then finally, we basically see this man, and we find out that back in New York or Chicago, one of those. Chicago. That there is the possibility, basically, of a giant lizard that is free in a museum. I'm just cutting straight to the choice of that.
We'll get to the bottom.
Yeah, I'm just speedballing to that part. That's it. That's the whole episode. We're done.
I mean, that's basically all we can say. Like we were talking about it, and we were like, okay, we need to get in, and we need to record this. Oh shit, we need to record it tomorrow or something like that. I think we both said we need to watch it, and
we hadn't actually watched it.
We hadn't actually watched it, and it was the first time viewing for both of us. And we looked at it, and it was like, oh, a ancient like Mesopotamic lizard god rampages through Chicago like museum.
Yeah.
Oh, great! That's going to be a solid 90 minutes. No, it's like an hour and 10 minutes of just sitting there watching Tom Sizemore go. I think
an hour and 50 minutes. 110 minutes, an hour and 50.
Yes. I was confused. Sorry. I was asleep for the episode. My mind is addled.
Rob was asleep like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. My brain is addled.
Our brains, yeah. Luckily, we have this absolutely
riveting
mind-numbing was the word that came then, and that wasn't what I meant to say.
Mind-blowing and
this
riveting.
It's going good.
It's going good. Which is why I would remind you to please leave us a positive review and subscribe, because this is the kind of well-researched, well-thought-out and
award-winning content
that you can expect. So January Dumping Ground is obviously films that they couldn't release at any time, really. Interestingly enough, we're doing this feature. They have just released Night Swim, which is another kind of film that you think it's a horror film. It's about a swimming pool. Maybe you'd want to release that in the summer when people are like using swimming pools.
Yeah, when you're going to scare them.
When you're going to scare them. But that's come out in January.
It has. I mean, I don't know if the January Dumping Ground thing is really so much of a thing anymore, because I feel like they're so overloaded with films. Like post-COVID, I think they backlog so much that they're like, we just need to release. And I think at one point January started doing quite well for like horror films and for like some of the ones that get forgotten when it gets to summer. So I feel like over the last like 5 years or so, the January Dumping Ground idea seems to have, not for every type of film, but for certain genres, I think horrors seem to have used January now as like, this is a good place.
Yeah.
Whereas back here in the 90s or early 2000s or the 80s, it would have literally been like, right, this film, we don't know who wants to see this film. Every test screening we've done has been terrible for this film. So let's release it in January, when people might just be like, oh, I'm just going to go and see whatever at the cinema and hope that it makes money, or it dies and they forget that we made this film.
Yeah, which I think is definitely the case with The Relic. I think I read that it was made on a budget of 40 million and it made around 40 million to 50 million.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a massive box office success. No, it's not surprising, to be completely honest with you.
It was a failure. It's a hard one. I saw when I was looking at this one, because this made it onto a lot of lists of ones basically like January films, because the concept of lots of sites online is like January dumping ground and things like that. Like over January, like that normally it's bad films.
Yeah.
So normally there's quite a lot of lists online if you look at films that are like films that were actually good that were released in January, and this one was on like most of those horror lists.
Yeah.
Was this film? The concept, that's the thing. I love a 90s creature feature.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we had so many of them. I mean, the boom of like Jurassic Park led to so many kind of creature features.
Yeah.
As well as, obviously a lot of other 80s ones, and then obviously anything else that was a creature feature, Gremlins and Alien, like all those kind of monster movies had kind of made a resurgence where every few years you were getting this new, like, slightly budgeted kind of like new horror monster they were trying to make. And the 90s was full of, there are loads of ones, and I have not rewatched half of these in a long time, so they could be absolute shit now.
Maybe.
But like Mimic,
yeah,
was, like in the sewers, Phantoms starring Mr. Ben Affleck.
Mr. Ben Affleck,
which was always I really liked that one. It might be absolutely terrible. The reviews online say it's awful, but again, in my head, it seemed like it was great at the time. And just loads of those, like Species and stuff like that.
Yeah, Species fucks.
Yeah, I haven't seen that in... I'm not sure if I've ever properly seen that one.
Good.
I've definitely seen parts of it, but I'm not sure I can definitely say I watched the whole film all the way through. It's like one of those ones that I think I remember when I was younger being on TV all the time, but I can't say I ever fully watched it. I just remember I had a woman who was like having sex with a guy, and then she turns
Alfred
into...
Molina. Yeah. She pipes Alfred Molina and kills him.
And then kills him.
Yeah. But it's, you're right, there was this kind of like boom of these sci-fi creature features. And I don't think this one particularly started bad. When I say bad, I don't mean that the whole film is necessarily bad. It's just a very strange film. Like,
I think that this is this is one of those ones where basically, if you hear the concept, and if you read the synopsis, it basically says, basically like a tribal lizard or whatever, like what is released inside of a museum. So you're thinking, right, we're going to have a kind of a setup, a bit of a setup. We're going to like set up why that monster's there released, and then most of the movie is going to be them trying to survive while this creature is released inside it. That's the movie you're expecting to see. What you actually get is the creature is kind of loose, and I think one or two people might die in very spaced out scenes. But it's not until about an hour and 5 minutes into this film that the plot that I expected to see starts happening, and that only plays out for the last 35 minutes of the film.
Yeah.
Like, that's the weird part of this film, is the fact that most of it is set up.
Yeah.
Then you finally get the creature, the part that you really want to see, the creature released and, on the loose and killing things. Actually, this reminded me of another one that I've talked about before that I don't know if you've seen, Deep Rising.
No,
which is where it's on like a cruise line, it's a monster kind of thing. That one has a kind of setup, but it gets into it like 10 minutes on, and you're already into like them going around the ship as the ship's been destroyed and people have been slaughtered. And, so that's exactly what I was expecting. This feels like it was trying to be a little bit more on the kind of thriller, sci-fi kind of side of things, and then it maybe realised that they weren't quite good enough to pull that off. I don't know.
Well, it starts interesting enough. We covered Cannibal Holocaust recently. Go and watch that with our Video Nasties feature, cheap plug. But that was it was a really fun and interesting film. And this film starts off with that kind of like tribal aspect. We see this guy John Whitby with a tribe. He drinks like this weird juice or something, and
it's like a soup.
Yeah, it's like a soup
that they give him.
He prangs out whilst looking at this statue, and then he's at a dock, and
it's a really weird scene, to be honest.
It's a very weird
to start the film, because he literally just like, you don't really know what's going on.
No.
He's got this guy who's just like wailing, like ah!
Yeah, he's just like high as fuck on on like soup, and then he gets on the boat. He looks for something that's supposed to go to Chicago, Natural History Museum or something. It's not on there, and then he starts freaking out.
Yeah.
And then we get an interesting part where the detective, who's real kind of like superstitious, turns up.
Augusta or something.
Yeah,
Tom Sizemore's character.
Yeah. They turn up and they're investigating the boat that's covered in blood, and they do find in the bilge. They do find like all of the decapitated bodies, and at first I was like, okay, this might fuck, you know? Yeah. I was like, this might fuck.
Like the investigation into like the trail towards it, and For that first, say, I think maybe half an hour as they're leading towards the museum and they get into the museum and stuff like that.
Even less, I think.
Yeah, probably
literally
less than that.
15 minutes, 20 minutes.
But once that first bit when they're basically he's investigating where these dead bodies have like come from, and those bit that bit I quite enjoyed. And what I also say actually in this film is, oddly enough, is I feel like Tom Sizemore, his acting is as if he's in a different film than he is what I kept feeling. I kept feeling like he is doing the detective role, but he's taking it far more seriously at times than I feel like some of the other actors are in this film.
Yeah.
I feel like he's giving a fairly strong performance most of the film. Like, he's going with it as if he is playing, like, you know, as if he's in some kind of proper, like criminal gangster film or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, he's got some dialogue to play with, but he's trying his hardest with it. Like, he's giving quite a strong, and I feel like some of the other actors around him are being classic cornball, kind of what you expect from a 90s creature feature, which is really tongue-in-cheek, like,
it's a bit jarring, isn't it?
You know, like our well, I gotta say it, sneaky Asian.
yeah, that is we get that, don't we? We get like the classic, and that's a very 90s trope. Sneaky Asian. You know,
to take like an Asian American guy and be like, he's a sneaky.
He's a worm. He's a sneak. He goes behind your back for the grant. Obviously, he's in the sciences or something like that.
Yeah.
He's a sneaky Asian.
He's got to look like a little slime ball because he's got to be like against our. And another very 90s thing is the sexy doctor or scientist.
Sexy scientist.
You know, we had a lot of that in the 90s. You know,
starts with Jeff Goldblum, surely.
I was going to say, well, Jeff Goldblum, but he's like the peak. But I'm on about like casting. I don't know if it was particularly like. I'm thinking more like in the 90s, like every Bond film, for instance, in the 90s had a scientist character. It was a female that was played by someone who was normally a model, like Denise Richards was in, like, World Is Not Enough or something like that. And she plays like a nuclear physicist, and everyone I remember just taking the piss, like, what the fuck? Like literally about like, how does she even know what nuclear physicist would even be? Does she understand the concept of what nuclear would be? Like,
it was a very like off that time trope.
In the 90s, there were loads of like roles where it was like basically they were casting women who were like supermodels, not amazing actresses. I'm not saying that about the who's in this one, but I'm just saying like straight away I got this trope, like, because you see her like straight away it's like you're looking at her body and it's the boys that are staring at her body, and you're like straight away and it's like, I'm a doctor because I can tie up my shit around my waist, or I can mess my hair up in a bun. Like, it's like I'm a scientist. Not saying in any way that a scientist or a doctor cannot be sexy as hell. I'm just saying it was a kind of a trope in the 90s. It feels like I remember seeing it more in 90s films than I have in any other else. Like, it had to be the sexy scientists and nerds were sexy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That is why I think that this film does play a little bit like it was trying to play to that kind of. It was almost hoping that it would get the Jurassic Park people to be like, come on, there's another creature.
There's another sexy scientist.
Because it all plays out, not just Jeff Goldblum level of sexiness, because she has nothing on
no,
Goldblum.
Nobody does.
I mean,
there's very few who do, you know?
But I mean more in like the way this film like kind of teases the monster. We don't see him for most of it. But then a lot of the deaths are like literally in my head were like, these are almost like, there are some more graphic ones, but a lot of them are like the PG-13 level of like a Jurassic Park film, where you're getting like shots of blood, or you're getting people screaming up above.
A lot of off-screen stuff.
Yeah, which is fine, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with slowly teasing a monster, as they do throughout this whole. But most of this film.
They do, but they switch it on its head at times, which makes it for me, it felt a little bit jarring. So the first kind of proper death that we get is the security guard who sneaks off to the toilet to like smoke a little zoot, and we see a giant like claw grab his leg and pull him away, and then the another couple of deaths after that you don't really see it, and then there's a scene where the monster's revealed in full. We have then a really, actually, to credit to the film, a really good SWAT scene where you see the creature in full.
Yeah, that was really cool.
And then we see it in the sewers again, where you just see a tail and like when you see it again, it feels very disjointed.
There is a little bit like I quite like the shot. I saw shots on Google before, and I was like, oh, I don't think that monster looks very good. But actually, in action, it looks far better than the pictures made it look.
Oh yeah.
I kind of like the design, but you're right. There was one thought that kept popping in my head. I was like, the size of this monster is wickedly inconsistent.
Yeah.
I was like, 1 minute it's able to be enough size that it can get under the door, but then another scene it's so big that it's literally able to like tower next to like a giant giraffe kind of statue. But then later when it's in the sewers, the water's only deep enough for the people to be like they're like waist up in the water, and yet the monster's somehow hiding its entire body under. Yeah. And it's like, I don't think you'd be able to do that. It'd be like the monster just like halfway out, like
just like watching them.
Yeah, just like acting like it's sneaking up. Yeah, and just like we can see you the whole time.
If I stay quiet, they won't see me.
But there is a bit, but I get that's not unusual with these kind of monster films. Sometimes.
Yeah, to be fair,
they do sometimes have a tendency to kind of not be quite sure. I think I actually compare because there's practical effects. There's Stan Winston did the kind
big Stan whole time,
classic, but there are CGI ones. When it moves properly, it's CGI, and luckily it's not too much in your face. There was one scene with the SWAT team where you can clearly see its whole thing behind him, and again it looks still looks too small compared to the man that it's holding in its hand before it decapitates the SWAT guy. But that's one of the more clearer CGI ones, and that's when in my head I was like, that's obviously this is 1997, so it is dated, but it definitely in my head was like, that's kind of Godzilla, 90s Godzilla kind of level of like, it just doesn't hold up.
I think it all doesn't hold up. I know everybody says
jumping around
jumping around doesn't. I know everybody says, "Oh, Jurassic Park does," but it doesn't. Jurassic Park doesn't.
That one, I think you're wrong on that one.
Yeah, we can disagree. Now that's the end of the podcast. I think my main thing is with this film, right? Is it goes. We get this. We get the boat scene where it comes. We get we get introduced to the characters, and then it just seems to. We get that first kill of the security guard on the toilet, and then it just seems like it. To me, it just seems to drag for ages. They're looking for for some kind of connection, and I know when I talk about like the actual plot points, it moves very quickly, because after this, they go looking for someone, or they go looking to see what happens. They see a homeless dude like in the tunnels or something in the sewers, and they just go absolutely fucking raggo shooting him, which is funny. And then
they think that that's the case, and they have the phone call with the mayor telling them that you've got your guy now. Get this place open because I've got a fancy dude.
And another 90s trope, the asshole mayor.
Yeah, the asshole like character mayor. But that's the only thing. Like, this film has a major. That first bit, the detective coming in, doing those things, the first death, literally, it does feel like half of all of this is just such added exposition. It's literally like, you've got them set up. It's all this set up in order to lock down the building, almost. They do a lot of this stuff to almost be like, oh, these doors are going to lock at this time, and they're really trying to set up all of these ideas, and they're also trying to set up all the ideas about, because in a lot of those scenes they have the stuff about the beetles, and the fact that then the beetle, and then later on she finds the beetle that's become wildly enlarged.
Huge. They're eating this fungus.
When it's eating the fungus, which is related to the hippocampus or
the
whatever. The bit that the monster seems to, whatever they say, is it seems to be drawn to that, because it's taking heads, but it's only taking that part of the brain. So there's something that it wants about that. And it's like, that's great. Lots of talk about this. Like, you're trying to set all of that up. But the problem is that this is now taking where those scenes you said, but a lot of those scenes seem to play out like over like 5-10 minutes of that scene just going on. Like, it's like they don't know when to cut, don't know when to edit it down. So this has one of major like the opening, the kind of opening stuff, and then towards the end of the first act, and then the whole second act is just a dip.
But the whole second act feels like it is like you said, it's a setup for the building to get locked down.
Yeah.
But effectively, all that happens, from my understanding, in the second act is they go into John Whitby's office and find it's been like ripped up. They do some analysis on the beetle, and it's like, yeah, it's got some other like weird like reptilian DNA in it. They just light up the homeless man, and then they have the superstition exposition, whatever exhibit, whatever it is, to get people into the room, and then they lock it down. And I went through that in about 20 seconds.
Yeah.
But the second act, it feels like it's...
Well, that plays out. Yeah. All that part plays out over 40 minutes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it just is that. Like, and the thing is, I think there's another death in there somewhere. There was like, but it is just those quick like, oh my god, like and then cut off. It's not like it's not like a grisly, gruesome one to sustain your bloodlust for a little while. You know,
get dog dying. And then a guy runs off.
Well, that's kind of just before they start to lock down. Though,
yeah,
isn't it?
that
like,
is.
because that's when it finally starts to build towards the. It does feel like basically it feels like what you'd expect in a standard film. It feels like that first act is then being stretched out for an hour, and then you go straight to the third act. It feels like there isn't really like so much of a middle. It feels like all the stuff that should have been set up in the first like half an hour of the film is then set up over an hour of the film.
Yeah.
And then therefore it kind of feels like you just go from setting up these ideas to the monsters loose. And there's no real like... You don't really get like to know... I can't say I really got to know the characters in that time, which you think they're like, yeah, it's fine because they're doing a slow build, so you'll really care about the characters. Tom Sizemore's character is basically exactly what he was an hour in, as he pretty much was at the start, which is, you know, he comes across as somewhat like kind of charming in this kind of way, but you know, there's something about his dog and his ex-wife. You've got that kind of built in at the start, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But apart from that, like you learn nothing more until a little bit later when the one thing that runs throughout is this is a superstition expedition, and he is a superstitious cop.
Yeah.
Constantly going on about superstition, telling his partner Holloway, I think it is, telling him like, don't step over the body, that's bad luck.
Yeah, don't pick up that penny.
Yeah, don't pick up that penny, it's the wrong side down. Like, and as far as I'm aware, that doesn't go anywhere.
No.
Apart from later on, he gives her a speech about a bullet that saved his life. He's like, this bullet was some like junkie kind of pulled the gun on me, and he shot me at point blank range, but it didn't go off, and then I beat the shit out of him. Yeah. And I took his gun, and the guys checked it. I took it back to the police station, and the guys checked it, and he was like, that was a perfect bullet. That should have killed you.
It's a very weird thing.
And so he's got this whole like superstition kind of thing within it, which again, playing on superstitions could be a really cool thing in a horror film.
It could be,
because there are some mad ass like superstitions out there. Like, what is it? Like, you should like fold your thumbs away if you go into a cemetery.
I've never heard of that.
You know, what was it? I was reading. I think I got it here. I was reading a bunch of. Here you go. So here's some superstitions.
Yeah, let's hear.
Fill this out. So obvious ones. Number 13 is unlucky.
Yeah.
Breaking mirrors and all that kind of stuff. Don't place two mirrors facing each other. So basically, if you're into that kind of kinky, sexy stuff, if you want to see yourself, then that's bad luck for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've got to say tuck your thumbs in at a cemetery. So apparently, it's an old creepy superstition, like the dead wandering and the thing, and basically that you'll offend the dead. If you
by having fun,
tucking your fist, it protects your parents from death in the old superstition. So basically, if you walk around putting your thumbs up toward people in the cemetery, your parents will die.
What if your parents are already dead? Then you're free.
They'll come back.
They'll
kill you.
Pet Cemetery style.
Yeah, umbrella. But don't trim your nails after sundown. I've never heard of the superstition before, but apparently it's a superstition. It brings bad luck. It's a Japanese superstition, a creepy superstition warning that trimming your nails at night can cause premature death.
I mean, I always trim my nails at night. After a bath or a shower.
That's the softest. So most of us,
Yeah.
But yeah, they believe that like discarded clippings will be eaten by rats who morph into monsters to terrify you in your sleep. Okay. This is Japanese, once again, that sounds like a great horror film.
It does.
Let's make that horror film.
Yeah.
I love this one. Singing at the dinner table summons evil spirits.
Okay.
So if you like to have a jaunty tune with your family around the dinner table, then some kind of Ouija board shit's coming for you.
No musical.
You're going to be haunted that night. Don't sing. So next time, like, your little daughter's singing Let It Go at the table, you slap her in the face and say, never!
Never! Yeah. Don't say you invite evil spirits to feast with us. It's an interesting one.
So, whistling attracts tragedy, apparently. If you like to whistle, that will be followed by tragedy in your life.
No.
Believe whistling indoors can bring bad luck, because causing the house to burst into flames.
Well, Anna does believe that whistling in the house is bad luck.
Oh, really?
So she won't let me whistle in the house. Or whistle indoors.
It's a Russian superstition.
Yeah, so she...
In Estonia and Latvia, the superstition takes a different twist. They believe that whistling indoors can cause bad luck, causing the house to burst into flames. Some Russians believe that whistling can cause financial ruin.
Yeah, that's what she says.
Yeah.
You whistle in the house, you'll be poor. So that's why that explains everything. That explains why I'm poor.
Another one, don't chew gum at night. So, a Turkish superstition, when a person chews gum at night, the gum transforms into the flesh of the dead.
But here's an interesting thing. A lot of superstitions are, like, old, you know? They're quite dated.
Yeah.
How long ago was gum invented for that to be a superstition?
Some of these are much more modern superstitions that someone's brought on. I have heard that one before. Hold your breath when you pass a cemetery. I have seen that one before, referenced in films and things like that. Basically, it believes that you're inhaling an evil force if you go past a cemetery and you don't hold your breath.
Okay.
And never rock an empty chair. Basically, apparently it brings out the possessed or the dead.
Okay.
So there's some superstitions that our detective would most likely not want to follow. And
we've we've discussed that as much as superstition is discussed in this film.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's his character trait, apparently. They decided he needs a trait, so he needs to be a very superstitious cop. So you don't see him chewing gum, because that could have turned into the flesh of the dead.
It could have been the flesh.
Again, would have been a more interesting.
Yeah. Although here's the thing, like they harp on about superstition. And you have the superstition exhibition, which is a little tongue twister. Yeah. And then you have John Whitby, who's like a anthropologist, and he's investigating these tribes. And you have this creature called, I think they call it like the Kafka or something.
Yeah. But
then they barely flesh any of this out. They don't really discuss any of this. They just go like, oh yeah, I'm superstitious. Oh yeah, we're doing a superstition exhibition.
Yeah.
Oh, he was there looking at tribes. Oh, he was at the start. He was screaming about this totem. You know.
Yeah.
Like they don't flesh any of this out.
There's no link to this, and plot twist.
Yeah.
The plot twist is that John Whitby is the monster.
Yeah.
So he is what so basically the soup that he drank is basically what transformed him into, like, they had poisoned him with something, which is why he was trying to stop the release of the whatever. It's not really fleshed out, and it's not really fully explained.
Because that doesn't make sense. If he is the Kafka and he is the monster, then what does that have to do with the totem? And what does that have to do with why he was trying to stop that?
This is the part where it's like the film's called The Relic, and yet the relic has nothing to do with the part of it, which you'd think might be the idea that basically, like, if it had told us that basically they have to,
he's been possessed.
They have to possess someone by it, or they have to choose someone in order to become it, or something like that.
Yeah, or they have to destroy.
Or when the relic is touched by someone, or whatever. They could have come up with any number of reasons, but unless I missed it, they didn't. They don't explain it. She just finds it on the DNA machine, and we discover it's that. But they never explain why, or why did the tribe do this, or any of that stuff. It's like it's not there, is it?
No. Was he eating the fungus on the boat?
What it says online is that the soup that they gave him is what transformed him. And him screaming in the boat when he screams, when you think it might be the monster coming out to kill him on the boat when they kill everyone else, is actually apparently when he transformed into him on the boat.
Yeah, I think that's obvious.
So that's pretty much all they explain about it. I expected to have some kind of a flashback of some kind of thing suddenly to explain why is John Whitby the monster, but there's no real explanation why he becomes this big lizard, apart from the fact that the relic, I guess, looks like a lizard monster.
But that's what we
and
see.
That's the superstition monster or whatever it is. This is apparently the link that links all of this together, but it's like it's not even a superstition that kind of saves the day of the cop.
Well, Tom Sizemore doesn't do anything.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It suddenly goes to that. Oh no! Now the woman the woman saves the day. Like, and it's like fine, yeah. But like I remember, I think I might have missed the part, but I was remember going like, where the fuck did Tom Sizemore go? He's not doing any of this.
From what I remember, and this is what I mean about like the film, it's really oddly put together. Like the whole time I'm watching it, I'm just thinking, have I missed like massive chunks of this film? Have I like had like a blackout and I've just like missed scenes?
Yeah,
because it drags its fucking bollocks throughout the whole film, and then it just like it has this hour. I would even say it has an hour and 20 minutes, an hour and 25 minutes of setup before it basically becomes Alien.
It's an hour. I looked on the thing. It was an hour and 5 minutes when they actually started the museum, like properly exhibition, and when we first get like that's when the dogs die.
Okay.
And then following that is that. So by the time the monster's actually fully roaming, probably about hour and 10, hour and 15.
Yeah.
So by the time it's actually fully like out chasing after them in that kind of classic style.
Yeah. But then
which is the final like 25, half an hour at most of the film.
Yeah.
Which is mad when you think it's meant to be a creature.
Which is, again, this is the good part, but it's also like, it feels like there was, like the setup was too long. All the wrong things were set up.
Yeah.
You know, it's just fucking weird. And then, this is what I mean, like it gets, I don't know if I missed something, but it gets to the end. And I mean, there'll be bits that we're going to talk about. We always jump around.
Yeah.
And Tom Sizemore is like, all right, the monster's got to be like coming for me. I'm like get here, get inside of this room or something. And then he closes it, and then the monster's after her.
Yeah.
And he's like trying to get back in the room, and she has to fight it.
Yeah. So
it was really weird. I was like, what? It's like
bad superstition.
Yeah.
Who'd done something wrong.
Yeah.
No, that like it's hard not to say that it's completely trash and like it's not that there were parts that I liked. It just it lost all your goodwill in that like middle bit.
Lost
like,
a lot of steam.
Like it really did. Like so when it finally happens, it gets a little bit of that kind of like finally. But also, I'm not sure if I should give a shit anymore.
Yeah.
Once it starts going, I started a little bit. Once it was going, I did start to get a little bit of that what I'd wanted for most of the film, which is, cool, now it's chasing them around. Like now they're going. Everyone starts to like split off into groups. There is like a quite cool death that kind of opens the whole like manicness of everything because. Obviously, they lock down all the rooms. Sneaky Asian locks Lady and Brooks downstairs. I call him Brooks because he's Brooks in Shawshank.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember. He's Dr. Franks or something like that. She's locked down there, so she has to start going through the tunnels and stuff. And this is just when everything starts to go a little bit off. You've got the dogs going down the tunnel. One of the dogs gets like slaughtered, thrown at them. The other dog, who I believe will later on become Tom Sizemore, the Vincent Augusta's dog, because he lost his dog, so now this is his new dog.
Of course.
But when it really kicks off is when all the hydraulics in the building start to kind of fuck up when it starts. And when the security guard, the police officer, that was taken down in the tunnels... Suddenly they see the blood dripping down, which is quite a cool scene.
Yeah,
like the woman getting covered in blood, and suddenly he drops down into the expedition and lands on all of these spears.
Yeah, that was.
And
cool.
His body with his head come off and rolling off, and it's like I was like, okay, we're actually into it now. We're doing it. Like that was cool. Everyone freaking out and running. And I was like, this is what we want. We want people. Now they're is that monster going to jump down and start just tearing them apart? Which. They didn't.
No.
So they all run through into the next room, and then this monster kind of is a bit inconsistent because it's like it's like here's all these people, and then it's like, you know what? I'm going to go back into the... I'm going to go back down into the bottom because the other characters are all down at the bottom of the building, so I need to go over there. It's almost like the creature has to go where the other characters are and has to spread his time equally.
Yeah, it has to follow the plot.
He's like split between there. So he just kind of appeared like there's a bit when he appears above in the top of the museum, and then, you know, when Brooks basically is like, leave me behind, I'm in a wheelchair, I'm going to die anyway, when he finally comes face to face when his death happens, but it goes from like a scene when he's in the middle of battling upstairs, and then suddenly it's like now he's creeping back down, but it's like, well, you've already implied that this is a big bit of tunnel down to get down to these parts,
like a mile or so,
like, so you're like, so Monster just decided, nah, I've got plenty of food here, but instead I'm going to come down and kill this one old guy just so that she can scream in the terrible way that she screams. That's one thing. She every time that she screamed in horror, like when she sees the dead body of the security guard in the first death, and she walks in and she does this like scream against the door and like collapses against the door, and I was just like, yeah, you're not quite a scream queen.
Yeah, it's a bit too much.
Yeah, she was a bit OTT, and she was the same with Brooke. It's just this kind of like flail against the thing, like, oh my god, no, and then Tom Sizemore like just kind of blank faced. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
I can't not look like a hard man. I can't look soft.
I can't not look. You know, I can't look soft. I have to be hard.
Kind of like a Mac in Always Sunny, like when they say that he's like a girl saying, "I'm not a goddamn girl." Yeah, I can't break this motif.
Yeah, I mean, I like the scene with the SWAT officers. That was cool as well. You know, although I found it really funny that they were just like, they have all of this. Like wind, you know, all of these glass like ceiling panels, and they're like, no, we're just going one by one. And so the first one,
break one, and then the rest.
Break one, and then we'll go down one by one. One guy gets killed as he's on his way, as he gets down. Yeah, and then the second guy goes through, and he starts like
running away. That's the one I was on about. Whether you see him like CGI monster like lift him in the air and it's like snip your neck.
He just snips his neck off. Yeah, that was really cool. And then the guy who's coming down after him just like shits his pants and it's like, pull me up.
That bit was really weird. That bit was some questionable CGI, because I don't know what the fuck was pouring out of his body, but it weren't blood. No. So when he gets back up onto like the thing, and you think, oh, he's got it, and then his face just goes like limp, and you're like, oh shit, he's got him. Like, he's half. Gone. I was like, this is gonna be really cool though, because his body's about to come over, and it does come over, and you're like, and like, it doesn't look like blood or guts. It just looks like a blank cut, and then a liquid that looks like a kind of watery, silvery liquid that's pouring out. It does not look like blood at all. He's an android. That's what I mean. Android. It literally looks like, what is it? The T-1000 or whatever.
Yeah.
From Terminator 2. Like, it literally looks like that kind of liquid pouring out of his body. It does not look like blood. It's like they've just CGI'd half of his body. Instead of deciding, hey, we've got, someone who does amazing practical effects. Nah, we're gonna use the CGI. So
that won't age terribly.
Take half of his body off, and then can you CGI some liquid pouring out of that weird half of the body? Yeah. And I was just like, man, that would have been so.
It would have been real
because cool. the headless part and the details with the faces and the heads are actually really good.
Even the monster looks quite cool. It looks weird as fuck.
It does, but like all of that's practical, and that's kind of the sad part. You had all of these practical effects, and I know you've got to make them jump around and move around, which is a hard thing to do with practical, so they've had to go CGI. That's fine, but it is just a case of you're there like, why didn't you just do that practical? You've got Stan Winston doing your practical effects. He's classic like movie monster horror kind of like thing, and you've decided and said, nah, we're just going to CGI these bits. It's like, all of these should have been practical, and it would have increased it enough, like just a bit more, to be like, that's not fake. Yeah, you know what I mean. So there were like those kind of cool scenes, like you had in that same room just before it. I say just before it again. Some of these are quite spaced out again. Yeah, but you had Sneaky Asian. Sneaky Asian gets chased through, and you want him to die in a really horrible way, and instead he just gets the standard off-screen kind of blood splatter kind of one. But he does pop down and do a quite cool where it catches the really whiny creator of it, who gets like fired moments before by I don't know, the one that looks like Edna out of Incredibles. You know, the little lady out of Incredibles.
I think it's based on her, isn't it?
I don't know. It seems like it should be, because if it's not, like, she looks.
I'm pretty sure it is.
But
I will double check.
He gets the crater and he tears it, like he tears him up, and you do actually get to see him. It's quite cool. You see him getting like thrown around and ripped into bits in his mouth.
Yeah, Linda Hunt.
Linda Hunt, that's the one. Yeah, and you get that bit, and then also you get the other cop, because you have this weird part of the scene where you've got the black cop and the fat white cop who've kind of got this dynamic going on about like how terrible this whole event is, and how horrible all these people are. So they've got like a little bit of a running joke. So when they're split up, there's almost this heartfelt moment of one of us has to stay behind.
Yeah, one of us.
Like as if they know, like and it is kind of like, oh crap, the ones that stay behind are probably going to die. So it's like, no, don't leave me. Like. And then that guy gets killed. I thought that guy was good. I thought they would, like, when he gets... Because that guy got, like, smashed through the glass into, like, one of the exhibits. But I thought it was kind of like, it's kind of off screen. So I think they're going to reunite these two characters. Yeah. The only two characters that for a moment had one emotional beat in this film. And I was like, they're going to reunite them together at the end. They're going to be acting like they died, but they didn't. And then suddenly I was like... That dude's got glass right through his neck.
He's not dead. He's not dead.
My theory is gone. And if he wasn't dead, well, his counterpart, because when he comes in the water, that guy gets his head off.
He just gets killed.
The black cop's head is floating on the water, and you're like, shit.
Yeah, he's not dead. He's not dead. He's not dead. He's just.
We can save him.
We can save him. We can stitch it back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I had this thing when you messaged me like, oh, it's a Stan Winston creature feature from the 90s. I was thinking, it's going to be really interesting. And then I read the synopsis because I felt like I shot myself in the foot, because you were like, these are the three films that we can do. And I'm trying to remember exactly what they were.
Hostel,
Cloverfield, or the Relic.
I was secretly hoping you'd choose the Relic, to be honest, because... At the same time, Cloverfield Hostel, which I'm sure we'll do at some point. Yeah. But at the same time, this was the one. And actually, I've been looking at this film because I was trying to remember. You asked me where you could find it online. Yeah. For anyone in the UK, if you do want to watch it after our glowing review, it's on BBC iPlayer.
Yeah, the one film on BBC iPlayer.
Yeah, as long as you have literally been on there for years, and I don't know why. Whenever I flicked on to look at their films, every time I'd be like, the Relic. That's one I've seen. Because the poster, the weird red, discard. I've seen that poster 75. So recently I've been watching some of those ones that I haven't seen for a long time. So I was secretly there I hope you choose that, because I've wanted to watch this for ages, but I don't know why. I need an excuse to actually watch it. Yeah. I need someone to be like, we need to watch this, so I'm actually going to watch it, because every time I'm like, I'll just go and watch Sonic again.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
But I'd never seen this film before, so I didn't know what the quality was. But yeah, I don't know. There's still something in watching something for the first time.
Yeah, of course there is.
Rewatching Hostel and Cloverfield.
Yeah, and I was hoping, Stan Winston creature feature from the 90s. Oh, I hear it's about a weird lizard from mythology killing people. Yeah. Oh, this could be real cool. And then I watch it and I'm like, there's no superstition, there's no backstory, there's no relic.
No. And it is somewhat kind of cool for the 25 minutes of monster time you get.
That opening sets the scene quite nicely. And then you have a trudge of an hour and 10 minutes where you get a few enjoyable scenes and then a lot of just fucking waffle. Yeah. And then you get to, this is what the film should have been.
Yeah, finally, the whole film literally should have just been, this last half an hour, 25 minutes, whatever it is, should have literally been we should have set it up, the cop goes into there, they find something, and to be honest, it should have literally been we need to lock this place down, there's something in there, and there we go, you know what I mean? Or it could have literally been by the time the cop got in there kind of thing, by the thing, they're this evening is the actual thing, but it's not that. It's oh no, not tonight. It's tomorrow night, and you've really got the day to do it. It's no, it should have been. They come in, and it's tonight, and by the time they realise the problem, it's too late. They've started it, and that's when shit just goes mad, and the hydraulics, and that's all the setup you need for this kind of film. But it does feel a little bit like they were trying to be I don't know, they thought they were trying to be smarter than they were.
Yeah, that's the impression I get. They're trying to be like, oh, we can drag this out and make it like a real slow burn. Instead, it's just like mind numbing.
Yeah. It
fell
comes
asleep.
down to lots of things. we did.
both
I
fell
fell asleep last night. You fell asleep. Well, you fell asleep last night as well.
Yeah.
and
again straight after.
It put you into lullaby mode. As soon
Twice.
as it ended, you said literally you like switched off.
Yeah.
It's a hard one to say because it's not hard to say that it's not great. I understand why it is a January dumping ground film.
Yeah.
I feel like all of the actors are doing the best they can do, and they're trying. And as I said, at some points, not throughout, but early, like for a good portion of it, I was thinking Tom Sizemore seems like he's doing a good job here. I'm sure once it really kicks in, he'll be good.
Yeah.
And then I kept waiting. As I said, all those actors trying their hardest, but it's just overly long. This film could cut half an hour easy. This should be a solid. This could probably be solid if it was a 90-minute film. Then it would have been a fun little ride. But you add an extra 20 minutes, half an hour onto that of just talking about scientific this and detective this and don't forget that superstition and that superstition. It did have one. When he goes to look for the security guard for the first one, the lady who's in the morgue does have a fantastic line where she says, "Don't you hate someone who takes head and never gives it?"
Yeah,
when she's talking about the serial, what they think is a serial killer.
Yeah,
I was just like, "That's a great line." It's not. Sadly, it's wasted, but it's a great line.
It's a great line in the film.
It should be in this film, but it's a good line. But yeah, you're right. It doesn't go anywhere with any of the stuff it seems to set up, apart from the fact that in the opening couple of minutes, they've set up John Whitby, and then they never really explain why it's him or why he has anything to do it. The actor doesn't appear. They don't do a flashback to show it unless it's a thing. Like I wouldn't be surprised, and I read up on this, but I couldn't find anything about it. But I would not be surprised if this film had some weird ass cuts or things like that, because it does seem all over the place at times. Or it's just the fact I just don't know who went and what studio went. Yeah, we'll spend 40. Some people were even estimating it might be more like 60 million on this film. Yeah. Like who went? Yeah, and that's why I'm saying like films like Jurassic Park and things like that obviously helped get films like this made.
Yeah, and
they obviously heard the concept, but it feels like someone just heard the concept. Great, a monster chasing around the museum. There's loads of good creature movies. People want to see those. Do it. And then they looked at it and went, "What the fuck?
What did you do?"
Sat there like an hour in. Where's the fucking monster?
You do have plan on having some monster in your monster movie, like that Jeff Goldblum thing.
Yeah. And it builds to that. We find out that John Whitby apparently is actually the monster in this film, which again, that as I said, it goes nowhere. No. There's no explanation. There's no John Whitby turning back into a man or something like that. There's no calming it down by speaking to John the monster, and suddenly he's like, I am fake. No, she says at one point, "I know who you are." She doesn't even say his name. She just says, "I know who you are."
Well, she says it, but she's like, "I know who you are." She says it angrily.
Yeah.
As if John Whitby's done this on purpose.
Yeah, but I was just like, as if the monster's suddenly going to react to, "Oh shit, I better get out of here.
I'm going."
She's going to catch me, you know what I mean? Instead of being like, "John," or, you know what I mean? In that situation, if you knew there was a human apparently in there, I was waiting for the scene when she somehow manages to stop it for a moment, when she goes, "John," or John, to try and bring out a human side of it, but it doesn't happen. Instead, she just tries to accuse it like it's a criminal. Run off the second bit. And it's just several weird. There's even a scene when Tom Sizemore, I think he should have died. His character should have been dead, because they create this huge super tanker of
liquid nitrogen
that will freeze you. And then the monster pops out in the water. Tom Sizemore is right in front of it. So you're like, "Oh shit!" And this was one scene where I was like, "Oh shit!" They're going to do. They looked like they were actually going to kill him, because it looked like that. And I was just
Tom Sizemore, right?
But I'd heard it was quite the female, so I was like, "That's how he ends up out of it." You don't expect Tom Sizemore to suddenly get off like that. And I was like, that would have been cool. But instead, no. So he pulls out his gun, point blank range, kind of like his little superstition thing.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's a case of his gun doesn't go off or he just...
No, it goes off. He's shooting it.
But then she grabs his liquid nitrogen and just bursts it. And I mean, most of it is not going anywhere near the monster, but it is covering Tom Sizemore. I was just there like... I was literally thinking like, oh my god, are they going to bring in like his arm gets like broken off or something because she's like... But instead it's just like, he's just like, oh, we got to get out of it. He like goes through the smoke.
Yeah.
He's like, got to get out of it. That is not how liquid nitrogen works. It might work with like a, if you're in a fire and you've got, if you're spraying people with that, but not liquid nitrogen. If you spray liquid nitrogen over someone, either it's going to do something inside their lungs and it's going to make them just drop dead, or he's just going to be like frozen on the spot. But it's also the fact that you're pouring liquid nitrogen, and they don't even think about the fact that one thing that definitely would start to freeze is the water that's underneath them. At least a top layer of it or something would start to form some kind of particles. Or around them there'd be some frozen, but there's not. She just sprays, which is obviously just like gas.
Like a fire extinguisher, yeah.
And then it's just like, oh, there's nothing there. The monster was just like, oh, that pissed me off. I'm just going to run off this way. And you're just there like... So that had, again, that whole plan, and then... And by the time they get to the end, it's a different plan.
Yeah.
It suddenly is more, instead of that one, it's like... So we just watched you for like 5 minutes doing this whole like, oh, if we do this, we could set up and we might be able to do this to him, and if we do that, and it's like all that happened was in one tunnel you managed to scare him off with a bit of gas.
Yeah.
And you nearly killed the person who was helping you. And it was just like, that is how some of these scenes feel like they're thought out. They're just like, they do something, but for no reason whatsoever.
No.
And yeah.
I feel like
I think we've gone pretty much as long as we can go on this.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had any other major thoughts.
Not on the film itself. I did look at the box office for January 1997 to see what else was out at the time.
This was number one.
Was it?
This was number one at the box office, which is why but it only made 9 million its opening weekend, which was really low.
Well, see, maybe it was opening weekend, because in the number one I've got is Jerry Maguire, which released on December the 13th, and was still in. I'm using Box Office Mojo by IMDb.
Box Office Mojo, yeah.
And then Michael, which I haven't seen, was second. Scream was released in December 20th. What did I say that weird? 20th of December 1996. So it was still in cinemas by the time Relic came out, and I've got Relic being fifth.
I've got this. To be fair, this was Wikipedia though.
I've
got the Relic premiered on January 10th, 1997. It opened at number one at the box office, grossing 9 million in its opening week.
Maybe it's the opening
weekend. A total of 33. Yeah. And against an estimated 60 million cost.
Yeah, so maybe the opening weekend it was number one.
Yeah, I think just its opening week. After that, like 9 million, that's like nothing.
No.
So that shows, but that's what I mean. Nowadays, even like that's obviously low. But nowadays, they wouldn't release films like that to that kind of low numbers. Back in the day, when not as many films were produced or created, that would have been like, because no one's going to the cinema in January.
Yeah.
But yeah, so same time as Scream, Jerry Maguire, which was a huge non-stopper. That's I don't know.
Mars Attacks.
I was just surprised. That's why I was surprised. So I don't know, but I was surprised when I was like, that was number one, really? Like, so I can see how the idea, but that's what I mean. Yeah. The idea would draw people in. It didn't make a huge amount, so it shows that the box office that weekend must have been a low box office weekend.
Yeah.
But still, just like this, we were somewhat excited about the idea.
Yeah. I love relics and trinkets, and films including them.
I bet the trailer probably made it look like all monster mayhem.
Yeah.
And so then when you're sat there, you're like, what?
I mean, maybe for future episodes, we should start watching the trailers, because I didn't watch the trailer for this. I never do anyway. But it would have made sense, because if you're looking at the box office and the marketing, we know that horror movies do the best opening weekend, and then generally, unless it's a franchise or Halloween, they drop it.
Even Halloween and stuff, they tend to drop about half or more after the first weekend.
Yeah.
They normally have to, unless they're one that really kind of gets people's attention.
That's what I mean. If it falls over like Halloween weekend, they might stay, or they might do relatively well. But like when you look at the percentages that they drop off, it's massive.
Yeah.
So I could see this, being you hear that Mr. Tom Sizemore is in a film.
This is when Tom Sizemore was.
This is when
had the chance of being possibly a thing before he went into drugs and then dropped way off.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But so I don't blame it for not kind of doing very well. I mean, it had a lot of kind of competition. Like Scream is obviously regarded as a classic. Jerry Maguire was big, but then you also had, like, looking at some of the other films that would have still been in cinemas. Beavis and Butthead Do America, 101 Dalmatians, English Patient, Mars Attacks. You still had some of these. Jingle All the Way. So it was still in Romeo and Juliet. You still had some films that
you look at these these were like our era to us. Like half of these films, to be honest, feel like to me I would be like, these are all classics. You're naming classic films to me.
I'm just naming classics.
These are our 90s, but that's what I mean. Yes, it had stiff competition, but the thing is that, having seen and rewatched most of those films within the last couple of years, most of those films are far superior and well-plotted films. And this one just isn't. As soon as people would have realised the state of what the film was, and I don't think the reviews weren't terrible. I think they were more mixed on this one, but I think some of them like the fact that it was trying to tell more of a story and not just being the rash, but I think that's worked against it.
Same. I think it could have done much better if it had embraced being a lot more creature feature.
I think it almost felt like it felt like it was a little bit too good to be just a standard creature feature, and felt like it had to like push it a bit more. And I think that's what brings this down, and that's why it landed in the January dumping ground, and that's why you were a box office failure. But I think that's as far as we can go with The Relic, not The Ritual.
I mean, it was interesting to check out. I wouldn't straight off the bat say don't watch it. But if anything, I would say, like, if you haven't watched it and you're interested in checking it out, it's not a completely bad film. It's not a dumpster fire. It's just a very middling and kind of drags at moments. But the last half an hour is fun, and that's what you would have gone to see, Yeah.
It gave me that nostalgia, and it makes me want to go back and check out all of those creature features of the 90s that I was on about. We should do more 90s creature features.
Maybe
we haven't done many monster movies, to be honest, I don't think, over our time. We need to do less slasher, more monster.
Well, maybe those who listen can let us know what 90s creature features you would like us to cover. Maybe Species with Alfred Molina.
Maybe Phantoms with Ben Affleck.
With Mr. Ben Affleck,
You tell us, are either of those films any good, or are they dog shit?
Species is good, man. Species 2 is really weird. I remember watching it because this was ages ago, and I watched Species 1 thinking, I've heard a lot about this, and I thought, this is a pretty cool film. Quite erotic, but that's never a bad thing. And then I remember watching the second one and being like, now there's 2 aliens and they're going to meet up and fuck. And then I was like, it's alright. And then I heard that there's like a 3rd and 4th one. And even like a reboot, maybe.
I will have to check out Speed. I'm probably going to. I feel like I'm now going to go off and
just gonna
watch
whack
random.
Just gonna go off
and watch creature features, not whacking it to Species.
Definitely going to whack it to Species. Well, that is our little episode on The Relic and the January dumping ground. Be sure to join us next week. Come and let us know what you thought of The Relic, if you've watched it, and if we were a bit too harsh on the film, maybe. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at CMTEH Podcast. Remember to hit that subscribe button and please leave us a lovely review. It's a new year. We're fucking hyped up for it. We're going to do it. We will see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.